Todd, this is your second time here doing this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
And as you recall, last time
Just chatted.
we chatted about what did we talk about last time?
I think we just talked about like getting started and going after your dream. Like we just kind of had a conversation about like what are the factors that bring you to change.
Yeah, that's right. How change is hard, and we can wait until it's painful enough that we have no choice but to change,
Right.
or we can, get on it and proactively change. And I think ideally we'll change before it gets too painful, but all that matters is that we react and change
Yeah.
eventually, I
Well,
guess, right?
that's the whole point of everything, right? Is to grow, is to become more
Yes.
than we are currently.
Yeah. And if we've changed and we've grown, then we can feel good about that. We don't have to think, man, why did it take so long? Who cares, man? There's no set schedule for anybody, right? We all are on our own path.
Well, that's the other thing is when you finally get to where you want to be, then everything that's in the past or anything that's like a bump in the road that leads you to a point where you felt frustrated in the past or you felt stuck, like all of that makes sense and it's all okay because where you're at is amazing. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of grace that you like retroactively extend yourself.
Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about really quick where you're at. You got a
So
beautiful.
yeah, I'm in northern Michigan. It's a slightly hazy, overcast day. Otherwise, the lake would be super blue and amazing. So it's just a little gray. So I'm in northern Michigan. This is part of my goal, life, and dream. Um, it's a family property. I was fortunate enough to have great grandparents that bought a bunch of property in this little town called Glen Arbor, Michigan, and built cottages for all of their kids. They had 4 kids, and then some of them had more family and bought more property. And so there's been this string of property up here that I came to as a kid, and it was the best time of my life. And so when I was at a point of reinventing myself and saying, okay, what do I really want? If I can be, do, or have whatever I want, what do I want? And what I wanted was the feeling of a kid, the limitless feeling of being a kid, and I could do whatever I want. I could, sleep all day or get up early and read a book, and I could go swimming. I could play in the woods. Like this was the place that felt like the most abundant to me. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was the place that was most abundant. So my biggest goal was I wanted to spend every summer back here, not just for me, but I've got 3 boys. My oldest is 12, my youngest is 9, and I wanted to give them the summers that I had growing up. And so this was 2016 when I set that goal. So every summer I come back here all summer long, and I have since 2017. I'll be back here like 8 or 9 weeks this year. It was 10 weeks last year, but it was only like maybe 5 the year before that. And so it's just a continual expression of like how I want to live my life. So
That's awesome. I love it. I remember when you did this the first time
yeah,
because I remember you're like, oh, I'm going to Michigan for a period of time, and I was like, I guess so. We're like, we got to get a couple movies in because we do movie nights before you go. I remember you saying, I want to be able to do this longer and longer each year, and it's
yeah,
really cool to see this come to reality for you.
yeah.
So you went through a long period of time, like as a child, this was like your special place,
Hmm.
and you went years without going to this, right?
Yes, yeah. So I was born in Michigan, but we moved to Arizona in like 20, or excuse me, in 1982, and so we would come back every year for a while as a child. My mom was a school teacher, and she would come back for the whole summer, and we'd visit family downstate, and we'd spend 3, 4. I think the longest we ever spent up here was 6 weeks one summer. My dad only had a 2-week vacation, so when he came back, he'd be here for a couple days, and then we'd go downstate and visit family. My parents divorced in '92, and it became less and less frequent. The next longest summer that I was back here was probably about 6 weeks. When I was 16, I worked at the grocery store, and it was kind of a miserable time in my life. I mean, like all 16-year-olds, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I was doing that job instead of hanging out on the beach. And then when I grew up and got older, and I'm a poor college kid, like I can't afford to fly out here. I got a job where I've only got so many weeks of vacation. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I look back at my life, like my kids had only been here twice. We came up in 2011 with my youngest son No, it was 2010. Excuse me. My youngest son was born in 2008, so he was here a year old. My second son wasn't even born, and then um, my kids were born in 2010 and 2012, respectively. So we came up again 2014. So all three of my kids had only been up here one time by the time I set this goal, and now they're up here every year. So
Did you find yourself trying to get back to a certain place? It sounds like where you're like, I want to feel that freedom and that
yeah,
aliveness that I
that's the
felt back when
feeling.
I was a child. Yeah,
Yeah, it's more chasing a feeling, right? Everything in
yeah.
life is based on feeling, whether you realize it or not.
Hmm.
And most people are trying to escape the feeling of being trapped, lost, stuck, frustrated, angry, powerless, unfulfilled, unsatisfied, victimized, whatever it is. We have the negative feelings in life that we're just trying to escape. And so for me, it was just thinking about this was freeing. So it's getting
Yeah.
back
So
to
yeah,
that
in fact,
emotional place.
you're focusing on um, filling it with yourself with a positive feeling and experience rather than saying, I don't want to feel bad. It's like, oh, this will make me feel good
Yeah.
and this will make me feel free. And then there's not space for the negativity. It's a different way to look at it, a different approach, I think, than focusing on what we don't want. You found a way to get what you wanted and what you needed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're either motivated by pain or pleasure, which is what we talked about
Hmm.
last time. And so this was for, I didn't know the word, but the word was abundance. The word was abundant. I
Hmm.
wanted to have that abundant life, abundant in time, abundant in wealth, abundant in joy and love, and abundant in like all things, right? And so this was the place that came to mind.
Wow. Do you find it hard when you first get there each year that to kind of to slow down and enjoy it? Do you have to like do a transition because you're like to
Sometimes,
get to that place where you can kind of release?
yeah. So, like, I started my own business in 2017, and I worked a lot that summer up here. I was on the screened in porch back here in 2017. It was more vacation because I had 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks up here, but I did a lot of stuff. 2018, I worked a lot. 2019, I worked a lot. Last year I spent more time doing what I wanted, and that was the first time in a
Mhm.
30-day period I earned my annual income in a month, my old annual income, the $35,000 in a month. And this year, my business has succeeded to a point where I really took vacation. Like, I came up here and I'm like, I'm going to work as little as possible. And so I've
Wow.
almost felt like work is more of a chore, but I've also dramatically multiplied my income so that I can do that. I could take that time off, but I feel a little bit guilty, like I should be doing something more. I should be doing something more. So I
I
still
mean,
have
I
that.
totally. I mean, I just came back last week. I did like a reunion down in St. George, and it wasn't even for a full week. But I decided I didn't even release any podcast episodes last week. Not that anybody noticed, but I was just like, you know what? Had this plan. Like, maybe I'll edit. I have these interviews I've done, and I need to edit them. And I'm like, had this kind of back in my mind plan, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like let things go, and it's gonna be okay, and just enjoy myself. And that was hard, because I kept thinking of things I could be doing, and it's hard to release. It's not that it's bad to be productive, but it's also really good to just enjoy your life and experience the moment.
To be
Um,
present, right? That's what I'm
yeah,
trying to
present.
do. Like, you
Hmm.
probably noticed, I haven't posted any pictures on Facebook at all this entire trip, and
That's true.
I didn't intentionally do it. But now I feel like, because I love looking at the Facebook memories and go, I remember that in this year, and I remember this in that year, and I'm not going to have that for this year just because I didn't. I'd rather be present. I've taken some pictures, but not a ton. I'm more enjoying the moment than feeling like I've got to document it for something or share it with somebody. Like, it's just different this year for me.
That's so interesting because it's true. Like sometimes I want to like document a really amazing moment because I'm like, oh dang, like this has to I have to share this or I want to remember this. But it's like, yeah, just experience it. It almost
Yeah.
seems like it has more value if you really experience it. You're like distracting yourself from the actual experience when you're busy thinking about how cool it would be for people to see this or know that I experienced this or whatever. Very cool. So I remember kind of the end of our previous conversation, we're talking about this idea of like kind of the positivity we put out there and kind of how do we like manifest this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I look at you and you have a very unique opportunity. Not everyone necessarily has a family property on Lake Michigan they can go to for weeks. Doesn't
Right.
mean they couldn't find a way to get that if that was like the most important thing, right? If that was their goal, they could do it.
Right.
But everyone needs to obviously determine like what is the thing that they want to search for or strive for. In fact, I just started this book called The One Thing just last night. In fact, I don't know who the
Oh,
author is. Let me
nice.
look it up. The One Thing. And I've only read like the first three chapters, but I'm like, dude, this is going to be really good. It's Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, like a Papasan chair. I think maybe it's Papasan, Papasan. But really cool because the whole idea is like we think we have to focus on all these different things, but really, it always comes down to if we can just focus on the one most important thing,
Yeah.
that's will give us success in all these other places. And one of the examples I gave that really resonated with me was you look at Star Wars, right?
Mm.
Star Wars, the first six movies. I know you'll like this. This is the example they gave, and I'm gonna maybe butcher the example, but I'll give it the idea, right? For the first six movies, let's say it made like $30 billion or something. I don't know. Let's just say that's what it was. And so, but what would you say was the one thing that made Star Wars successful? Was it the movies or was it the merchandise?
Well, so the merchandise took off and had a life of its own, but for me, I think it's the emotional impact that people left the theater with, right?
Yeah. Even though they said maybe it was like 90 billion the products made, the
Hmm.
merchandise, but the movies made like maybe a third of it, quarter of it. But
Right.
he's like, still, the one thing was the movies. Because without the movies, no one
Without the
cares
movies,
about this merchandise, right?
well, but also like because I've been the Star Wars geek that I am, every single time I've seen the original Star Wars in the movie theater, like everyone applauds, like loses their mind when the Death Star explodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason that the merchandise or the soundtrack, by the way, the soundtrack made a ton of money compared to other film scores from 1977. Um, they wanted a piece of that. They wanted to take a piece of that feeling home with them, right? So you buy your little Luke Skywalker and X-wing action figure, and you play the soundtrack to it, and you read the book and you read the comics, and it feels like you're in the theater when the Death Star explodes and everybody applauds.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is emotional impact this thing did, and so the one thing that makes this so successful is that emotion they're able to bring into people, right?
That's
And
it.
everything around that, like how do we get that emotion? And whether this was intentional or not, right? But that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
That's what makes it effective. And they were like, what are the things we can do to create that emotion? And they did it, right? And it
yeah,
was successful.
yeah,
So we look at our lives and we say, like, what is the thing we need to focus on? That can be hard to isolate down to the one thing. But like you said, maybe for you, would you say the one thing for you was I want to be free enough to go to Michigan every summer? Was that kind of a
yeah.
big motivating factor? Was that the one thing for you?
That was the one thing for me. It was that mattered more than the money.
Hmm.
More than the money goal, because I had on my goal card. I'm so happy and grateful now that I earn $100,000, over $100,000 a year. Actually, I don't even think I said that. I think I said six figures. I'm so happy and grateful now that I earn six figures and spend long summers at the cottage in Michigan. Like I put the money in there to please my coach at the time, and I
Hmm.
wanted to have an income goal, and that was like triple my income. But it was this. This is more than anything what I wanted.
So like if you would go back, you'd say, actually, you maybe put that goal because you thought that's what would look good or that person might want you to put, or you don't know, maybe, but you say really the most accurate thing would have been spend my summers in at Lake Michigan,
Yeah, that's it.
right?
That's it.
Okay. So how does someone do this? Like, how does someone like, I guess, decide what's going to motivate them, and how do they manifest these big goals in their lives to make their life better and more meaningful?
So that's, I mean, we could talk for hours about that
Yeah,
because
hurry up and answer.
that's a process. I think it comes down to being honest with yourself. You've got to be honest first and foremost. Most people are not honest with themselves. Most people are extremely dishonest with themselves. They don't want to admit what they want. They don't want to admit how they do feel. They don't want to admit um, really any responsibility for their lives. And so it comes down to being honest.
Hmm.
Are you 100% happy with where you're at? 99% of the people are going to say no. Okay. Then what would you love to have happen to you this year that you're not expecting? I think that's the one question that you can ask yourself. Like, what would you love to have happen? And it's that question is phrased in a way that allows people to just kind of wonder and play with that. Like, oh, I'd love to win, 150,000, $150 million in the Powerball. Well, why? What would you do with it? how would that change you? How would that change your life? What's the first thing you would go buy? I guarantee you,
Hmm.
if you won the Powerball, the first thing you are not going to go pay off all of your bills. Like, screw that. That can wait for next month. Like, what are you going to do? Are
Hmm.
you going to take your family on a trip to Disneyland? Are you going to quit your job because you freaking hate it so much? Like, what's the thing that you're going to do? What would you love to have happen to you? And if it's money, why? If it's
Wow.
a relationship, why? If it's like, yeah, and play with that idea.
Like
That's how
try to
you've got
put
to
yourself
start.
in that mindset, which is hard, like you said, like to be really honest, and it's hard to maybe like try to really imagine having that much money, right? Like what would you actually do?
Yeah.
And just be honest. And you're right. Like it would probably like let's go somewhere really amazing, do something so I can go pay off my bills. And it's not just all of a sudden having all this money. Oh, I'm happy now. Money's not happiness.
No, because you're
That's
gonna wake up.
amazing. I need to
Because
ask.
what's funny, like you're gonna get that check, and you're gonna
Hmm.
cash it, and you're gonna have 150 million dollars in the bank, and you're gonna, like, pardon me for being crass, but you're gonna wake up the next morning and go to the bathroom and take a crap in the exact same way you always have for the rest of your life,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
You're gonna have to eat food. You're gonna have to, make your bed. Now you could even hire someone to make your bed, but you are fundamentally going to be the exact same person. And so when you start looking at what do you want, what's the one thing that you would love to have happen to you that you're not expecting this year? I want to find love. I want to find fulfilling career. I want to see my kids succeed. I want to have a lot of money. I want to buy a sports car, have a dream home. I want to take a dream vacation. Why do you want that thing? You want that thing because it's the expression of a feeling or emotion that's polar opposite to what you're feeling.
Hmm.
So I want the money because I'm tired of struggling financially. I want to quit my job because I hate working here, because I hate how my boss makes me feel. I want a relationship because I'm lonely, right? What we want is the polar opposite to where we're at. And this is where people don't want to be honest and look into that feeling of loneliness. That's what needs to be addressed. The feeling of lack, financially or emotionally, or the stress of a job. That's where your work is. You have to resolve that feeling if you're ever going to manifest anything bigger, better, beyond where you're at.
So I guess if I'm following, it seems like the power is determining what that thing is and really why you want it. Because you might think I want a sports car, but it's like really what I want to do is feel free and I can hit the road and just go anywhere I want, or whatever what
Exactly.
really is the thing. And it's like you don't necessarily, or you really don't need 150 million dollars to get that reality.
Right.
And if you're like, you know what, if I had 150 million dollars, I would just drop everything and go to Disneyland, like you said. It's like,
Right.
well, then where's the way I could do that sooner than later? Like
Right.
instead of waiting till I have 150 million dollars. Is that kind of what you're getting at a little bit? Is like
Well,
determining and like taking steps, or
yes, but what I'm saying is the feeling of where you're at and where you're stuck right now in life is the problem.
mm,
You feel lack, you feel anger, you feel powerless. You need to resolve that feeling, right? To manifest what it is that you want, you have to feel like it's already happened. Neville Goddard writes about this. He does a lot of spiritual mindset, law of attraction kind of writing, but from like 60 years ago plus. So in his book, The Power of Awareness, he talks about the feeling of the wish fulfilled. What you need to possess is not the thing, the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So if you want a relationship because you're so lonely, you need to not feel lonely for that relationship to show up.
oh, so you're saying you need to like start manifesting that emotional state. It's like emotionally dressed for the job you want, kind of
That's
thing. Like you want to be
exactly
in
it.
that place.
That's
Okay.
exactly it, right? Because once you feel that way, things start happening, right? Like
Mm,
let's go back to a conversation that we had. I think this was maybe going to driving up to the funeral for Andy, and Kevin and you and I were in the car, and I was like, you were in between jobs at that point, I think. And I'm like, dude, why don't you just do
yes.
your photography business full time? The feeling that you had is I can't do that, right? Because I feel like maybe I get burned out, or maybe I couldn't rely on myself, or I need to have this outside. security in a job, right? That
Mhm.
so you couldn't imagine doing that thing because of how you felt. However, the and I was like, yeah, go buy a drone, because and you're like, man, that's expensive, and who's going to want drone photography, and blah blah blah, this and that and the other, right? Like all of
Mhm.
those kind of lack ideas. But once you felt like, you know what, maybe I could do more of this. Maybe this is a great. Maybe I could get a drone. Maybe once you felt that way, guess what happened? You got the drone, your business grew, right? You're
Mhm.
making the podcast. You have to feel that way first for those things to start manifesting.
Well, it's funny because I remember that conversation now, and I remember I've had this kind of thought before because it's like, it doesn't just because I have a side business doesn't mean it has to become my full time thing if I don't want it to be. But the question is, do I really not want it to be, or am I just scared that it can't be? And that's
Yeah,
the thing I was remember that conversation was like, I don't even know whether or not I want this. I just think I'm too scared about if it's even possible. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And that's
yeah.
like was totally in the way of me deciding what I even wanted. You know what I mean?
And that's an uncomfortable examination, right? Most
Yes.
people don't want to sit down and lean into that. This is where that term lean in that Brene Brown talks about, lean into the discomfort. Well, you have to lean into, well, why do you feel like you can't do that? Why are
Oh
you
yeah.
afraid to question it? Um,
It's so hard to have those honest in dialogues. And when people point it out to you, because I remember I've had conversations with you where you really asked me some very direct questions. We're just kind of casually hanging out for Kevin to show before I watch a movie. And I'm like, I don't like the way I feel right now. And I'm like, I'm not like mad at you or anything, but I'm just like, I don't like that. I don't like this, but it's like, and I'm thinking there's something wrong, but it's like, no, man, I'm just having to really get inside my head and my heart a little bit, and that can be really uncomfortable. And many times people might just push that away and say, "I don't want to go there anymore. I don't like that place." But it's
yeah,
so necessary, right? You got to traverse those
you
paths, I guess.
you have to. The conflict inside is something to be resolved if you're
Hmm.
going to get to where you're at. That's where the work is. Most people,
Mm.
like, when, because I coach people in law of attraction and abundance and things like that. When, our first conversations are always about, what is it that you want? What does that look like if we work together and I'm going to help you get whatever you want? What does that look like? What's the destination look like? And then, why are you not there? And we have some surface level discussions of it. But if I had in that conversation told them, hey, you've got to stare down all of your demons in the face to get what you want, most people would be like, yeah, no, I'm good in the comfort zone. I'm good. I'm good remaining ignorant.
Yes. And the way you kind of say this like very broadly earlier in this conversation, you're saying like people like you're afraid, you're not happy. It's like, I mean, is that generally true about people? Would you say? I mean, obviously,
100%.
the like, would you say even you, like, you've made these steps? Would you say even now that's true for you?
100%.
Okay, like how come?
Well, because there's I'm still competing with inner shadows and demons inside of me. The biggest problem that we have is comparing ourselves to other people, and that's actually not
Yes.
even comparing ourselves to other people. It's an imagined comparison. Like, I think that this person must be so much better than me because of what results that they have, and so we kind of like diminish ourselves and elevate ourselves, or elevate other people in that comparison, and we try to judge ourselves by our perception of another person. And that creates an inferiority complex. Most people feel inferior to somebody else, and if they don't, they're lying to themselves, because everybody has some insecurity. And so what do they try to do? They try and compensate and try and be more superior than other people. This is the whole, like, the most weak-willed, weak-minded guys go out and buy the super muscle cars, right, to cover that ineptitude.
Hmm.
Right. So we're always compensating based on our perception of other people. And so
So
we
like,
always feel that way. And I feel that way too. I have that same challenge sometimes.
but you're happier than you were, I imagine. Like, there's still a
Oh,
reason to do this. Like, we're gaining
100%.
more levels of clarity and self awareness and happiness and meeting goals, like whether it be
Yeah.
um, physical or emotional. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason to still do this. I because when you're saying this, I'm like, dang, you're always gonna be like this. Well, it's like no, but like on some level, right? We're always imagine. I
Otherwise, you're
guess what's
not
more
growing. Otherwise, you're
exactly
not
what's
growing.
I was about to say what's more depressing than being like, oh, cool, I don't have to do anything ever again. I can just sit here and I've arrived. No, we've never fully arrived. That'd be the worst part ever.
That's
Not
it.
having been able to grow.
Because whatever happens in life to bring you the success of where you're at is not the same things that's going to help keep you there. Right. So as soon as you
Mm,
start arriving, you start sliding backwards. right? So I've
Mm,
experienced that. I've had crazy success in the last even 6 months. I mean, this year I don't want to flex, but I feel like sharing some concrete realities with people helps them understand. Like, so I've earned $250,000 this year so far. That's a far cry from $35,000 a year.
yes.
And once I hit that and I hit a certain status, I coach for a guy named Bob Proctor, who is just one of the best human potential teachers, one of the best prosperity teachers in the world. I'm one of his top coaches. In fact, I'm probably one of 5 coaches in the United States that has this level of success with him. And once I hit that level, like I didn't have the next goal in mind, and I started backsliding. Right?
Mm.
There's a burden that you carry once you realize that you can be 100% responsible for your life and you can create whatever you want. Is that now you know that when your mindset isn't right, that you're screwing it all up,
You're doing it to yourself.
but you're doing it to yourself. And
Uh-huh.
so the whole reason to set the next goal and to grow isn't because I need more money, but there's things and experiences that I want that I know I can have. And if you know that you can do it, then you're compelled to follow through with it, because otherwise, what's the whole point?
So you've taken the whatever pill that takes you out of the matrix. Like you can't go back. Like
You can't go. Yeah, you can't
too
go back.
much. You're aware of what's happening. I think that's the name of this episode is the power of awareness. That's what I've decided because
It
that's where it's at, man.
it is. It is, and everything is about awareness. And most people who aren't honest are just content to like put their heads in the sand and continue to be unaware. And
Mm-hmm.
that a lack of awareness is where the powerless victim frustration mentality comes in, which is where 99% of people live.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, on some level, I've been there, and I'm still there. Obviously, we all are, like you said, we're all working through things little by little. But
And
that's
doing our
this is what
best.
for me right now, the thing that hit me was this podcast for me is the one thing because what this thing podcast has done is pushed me to learn new things, think differently. It's made me do better at work because now I like think how can I make the most of where I stand here at work. Maybe I don't do this forever, but if I'm going to be here, I'm going to do it the best I can. I've
Absolutely.
already had opportunities be presented to me to potentially be have more leadership opportunities with where I currently work. 'Cause that's what I want. My side business, I've already been able to make it more passive because to me, that's what I'm pushing for is more passive income. I'm already like, I have someone who I'm training to become a photographer so that I don't have to do all the photo shoots anymore. All these things. And it's like, wow, these are the things because of this podcast. For me, it's not the only thing, but it's the most important thing I think I'm doing right now.
Well, it's growth.
At
It's
least,
growth.
yeah.
And growth, so by law, needs to be expressed globally. If you're growing inside by law, it's going to show up in your outside results.
Mm,
It has to. That's part of natural law of correspondence, as within, so without, right? So you're going to grow within. You have to manifest growth opportunities outside of you. And most people are not growing. They're not.
mm,
Most people are looking for someone outside of themselves to do the growth. So their boss needs to come up with their professional development plan, or their teacher, or friends or family that they're in, because as kids we were relying upon our parents to help us grow, but at some point we need to take responsibility for that growth and start doing it
mm.
ourselves. And
Yeah, like if we just wait for, oh, go ahead, sorry.
no, and most people aren't ready to do that.
Yeah, if we wait for like our manager or our supervisor to tell us this is what you need to do to get to the next level, it's like,
Your
no, you know what I
manager or
mean?
supervisor who's probably not growing themselves.
Yeah. I mean, and even if they are, like everyone's responsible for that for themselves. And so that's the thing that I'm realizing as people listen to this. That's why this is so relevant because my podcast is about learning about investing and building wealth, increasing your passive income. Like, why are we going to do this? Like, what is the motivation? It's because that's what you need to determine. If you're listening to this and you're saying, I want to have an awesome retirement or I want wealth right now, which is what I want. I'm realizing it went from me saying I want to have a great retirement to like, no, I don't want to wait till then. I want to have wealth now and abundance now. Ask yourself these questions. These are going to be hard, but like, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve? And put yourself in that mental place now, and start growing. And then, like you said, growth will happen externally
It
once it
has to.
happens internally. It has to, right? It's like a law
Yeah,
of the universe or something.
it is. It is. It's one of the laws of the universe,
Wow.
right? It's
So
our environment is a reflection of what's going on inside with us. Period. And so if you are stuck, if you are frustrated out within, without, and you're outside reality, you're going to be confronted by all of those things that continue to make you feel that way. So you got to change it from within first, which is where we say, what do you want? Why? That thing is a expression or a manifestation of the opposite feeling and experience that you feel right now. So therefore, you've got to work on that inside feeling.
hmm to change that feeling inside
And there's a whole lot more that
first.
goes into it, but
Oh,
we're,
sure. But I mean,
we'll,
this is
we'll
great. And
apparently
if
do a
someone,
series of this.
I'm up for it, man. Um, and I'll just say, if people wanted to learn more about you and even reach out to you potentially, because you coach people and you help people with these
Yeah.
things.
So actually, the best place to follow me and see what I do is on TikTok at Todd L. Bauerle, is my handle at TikTok, which I'm sure you can put in the show notes or something.
Yes.
Last name Bauerle. So follow me there. But actually, I've got a free workshop coming up in like about a week here. So
Really?
yeah, so
Can I get the
July.
link to that or something that I
Yeah,
can
I'll
put in
send
the
you
show
the
notes?
registration link. It's July 26th through the 30th, and I'll have some more content that'll go through that weekend. So that's Monday, the 26th of July through the 30th of July is when I'll be doing teaching.
26th or 22nd?
26th.
Oh, you
So
said 22nd.
it's another week away.
Okay, 26th through through 30th.
Yep, and it's going to
Again,
be at noon Eastern time. I'll be here on the deck if the weather's good, doing teaching. It's called the secret to and to the what am I calling it? The secret to abundant living.
too abundant living. Well, I'm going to have this episode released on Wednesday of this week,
Rad.
and
Plenty of
so
time
it'll
for
be
people.
before this happens. So
Yeah,
for anyone hears this, you'll be able to you have an opportunity to do this free like virtual kind of remote workshop thing. They can join
yeah,
live. It sounds like.
yeah. You can
Uh,
join live. It's going to be streamed on TikTok. I'm going to stream it on Facebook as well,
oh, okay,
in a
cool.
closed Facebook group. I'll put up links on YouTube for those sessions once they're recorded and done. I'm going to try and figure out a way that I can stream live to YouTube as well. So we'll have a couple of options for people to be watching. There will be a workbook. Like, come if you're ready to start leaning into the work.
Yeah.
And if you have that feeling inside that you want to change and you don't know how to create that abundance in your life, we'll talk about it for sure.
Awesome. Very good. And like I said, I'll get the link from you to where I can put in the show notes so people can get to this as well as the handle for TikTok. Thanks so much, Todd. I appreciate you taking the time again to talk about this stuff. I love talking about these kind of things. Um,
Awesome.
it's so important and it's so invigorating to talk with someone else who really cares about growth and helps you realize things about yourself. And the more you grow, it never stops being exciting. That's what's cool. You get
Yeah.
to this certain milestones, you're like, wow, I feel like so you can really feel accomplished and great. And then you can just there's always more. And you can feel that again. You can feel that same rush
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
accomplishment over and
Which
over again.
comes only from stepping into the unknown.
Ah, that's true.
Only, and that's because you realize you have to travel the unknown to get where you want to go. You start to become more and more willing to say, I don't know how to do this, but I know that I can. Therefore,
Mm,
I need to find a way to grow and do that thing. It's exciting.
yeah. It is very exciting. And then the more times you see its work, the more you just are excited. Be like, I don't know how this is gonna happen, but it's gonna be fun and it's gonna be really exciting when it does, you
That's
know?
exactly right. That's it.
Well, thanks again, Todd.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.